Okay, guys, so we are live. So for those listening at home, welcome to the Dungeon Musings YouTube channel. My name is Kevin Madison, and I'll be your friendly referee today because today we are carrying on with our ongoing campaign playing Mongoose Publishing's outstanding Traveler, 2nd edition. And we are... well, we were going to carry on with our ongoing campaign playing the Pirates of Drinax, but we decided to wrap up that campaign now. And no, I'm kidding, of course. We are.
What?
We realized this morning
We're playing the Dark Eye now. No.
Exactly. Schwarzenegger forever. We realized this morning we had the entire crew here. And it's, at the time of recording, it's our first session of 2025. And there are some campaigns where we do our, a year-end overview at different stages in the campaign or whatnot, but we're kind of in the middle of an adventure right now anyway that we don't know when it's going to end. So, and by we, I mean I guess, don't know when it's going to end. So we thought we'd put a pause on that and do an impromptu kind of look back on what was our 2nd year of Traveler, because we're going into our 3rd now, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, some big events and big changes in the crew, and then a new mission. So, I guess first off, let me introduce you to, or in a moment, I will introduce you to the crew of the Rift Wanderer, who have been on this traveling adventure for these last 2 years. But I will say this will contain spoilers for our campaign. So if you are making your way through the campaign and you want to enjoy the events as they unfold, we're likely going to spoil some outcomes in the course of our conversation. So maybe come back to this in the order it is in the playlist if you choose to. But let me go the order I've got you guys on the screen here. Why don't you tell us who you are and who you're playing today? First up, we've got James.
Hi, I'm James, and I'm playing Captain Ganny. So,
very nice. Who is Captain Ganny?
Captain Ganny is the captain of the Rift Wanderer and part owner.
And what did he do before?
Engine room tinkerer.
Yes.
And Imperial spy. He's a man of many talents.
Very nice. Next up is David.
Hi everyone, I'm David, and I'm playing Dr. Ilyas Abdel, a master spy and assassin, according to some, although the day job is being a physician and part owner of the Rift Wanderer.
Nice. Well, I'll say too, if anyone has any, because we do have a few people who join us in chat regularly for this. If you have questions for the crew or for myself, please feel free to post that in the chat if it's live or on the comments afterwards, and I'll try and respond to them in a timely fashion. Next up is Carl.
Hello, I'm Carl, and I play Anchor Guvel. He's a Varger, but he's not from the Extents. If you know the Traveler universe, he's actually raised in the Imperium and was in the Imperial Navy for a very long time. So he is a pilot of the Rift Wanderer, and there's a hypothesis among the group that he and the princess are never in the same room at the same time. So are they the same person?
There's one crucial maneuver you guys never see in Anchor's quarters when you go there, and that is the, Mission Impossible reveal.
The mask reveal, yeah.
Yeah. Then next up is Jeffrey.
Hey everybody, I'm Jeff, and I play Alonso Santoro. He is a journalist and an author, sort of an investigative journalist, and he likes conspiracies. That's why he's friends with Ankar. And he gets himself into trouble all the time, not including, weak psychic abilities that somehow always drag us into deep problems.
Nice. And last but certainly not least is Graham.
Hi, I'm Graham, and I have been playing Dane Loverick, but I'm now playing Laris Zathu. And Laris is a sort of agent analyst. He's a Darien. He's far from his local system, and he is a recently co-opted member of the crew.
Very nice. So what the last year we've seen as far as changes or developments is the conclusion of the Borderland Run module. We saw, maybe we're a year and a half in. Gosh, I can't remember when we started playing. I should have checked that before we went live. Just because I
29th of January 2023.
Yeah.
Is when we had session 0.
Oh, my
yeah,
goodness.
there we go. Holy
Wow.
hell.
The notes.
Fantastic.
2 years.
Every group needs one. The diligent note taker. George can fill in for us on Night Below, so that's much appreciated, David. So it's coming up on 2 years now since we started playing. We've concluded the first module. We've started out on a new adventure. You guys have a new patron right now. We have a recurring quasi-patron or potential patron, and we have a new crew member as well. So, guys, I guess, before we talk about the year and the events that are in there, why don't you tell us how different the characters are at this point from when we first rolled them up? Well, I mean, Laris obviously was not a twinkle in your eye at that point, but where we find the characters now, how different is that from where you expected them to be when we started playing? Why don't we go? I'll alternate left to right, right to left, so we're not doing the same, panel order each time. But James, what do you think? What is Captain Gani? Is he the same? Is he?
Well, disappointingly, he's a very much sort of the same. He's a stolid man, but the more he's been outside and tinkering with outside the Imperium, the more a Navy man he finds he is.
Expats are the fucking worst, man.
They are bastards.
It's not quite the same, but...
Or immigrants, as we call ourselves.
Next up, David, what about Dr. Abdel?
Oh, another expat.
Yeah.
I think he's changed in that he's become much more used to the rough and tumble of being out in space. He obviously started off quite sheltered, going from university to the palaces on Samok, and has had to adapt and learn a lot in terms of actual life, and how to deal with the fringes and the Trojan Reach and all of the adventures we had there. So I think he's picked up a lot of skill that I didn't think he would pick up along the way, possibly including some spy-related skill sets that he didn't think he would have to use, but
definitely not
learned a lot.
Revealing skills that he already knew. That guys, I don't want to have that can of worms opened up again. Our Discord was just questioning where Dr. Abdel's actual training came from.
Right.
No, but that's interesting, because in my mind the most significant example of that is having to unfreeze someone from low birth, having suffered a gunshot wound, right? A seemingly fatal gunshot wound.
Yep.
Yeah. What about Anchor?
Yeah, I think Anchor was kind of a pilot, kind of given off, or given up on the Navy career, and we're just going to trade and all that kind of stuff. But some of the adventures kind of brought that back. The operation that you just referenced with Dr. Abdel, and that was like a amazing operation, and Anchor and Dane kind of led that operation. It went very smoothly, and it's like, wow, I guess maybe yes, he's a pilot by day, but now we're all spies by night, I guess.
And Jeffrey, what about Alonso?
Yeah, I mean, I think Alonso is sort of how I envisioned him. He's coming along, but he's definitely less of the sort of action hero that he envisioned himself to be, and more of sort of the trouble magnet.
Yeah, if you go back to early sessions, there's quite a few clear references to Alonso saying he wants to get in an adventure. I want something interesting to happen. I want to have an adventure.
Absolutely.
He is not calling for that as often anymore.
No, not as much. Now he's a little more cautious. That's fair. He's still looking for adventure, but he just thought that he'd be the hero of the adventure, not just writing it down.
Yeah.
He's felt like he's contributed less than he thought he'd be able to, I guess.
You were expecting to be the one punching a guy in a top hat and monocle, not the one, tied to the train tracks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Alonzo thought that.
Yeah.
Well,
Nice. And Graham, you got 2 characters who have gone through arcs, one longer, one shorter thus far, but still quite significant. What are your 2 fellers?
Yeah, so I suppose Dane Loverick. I really enjoyed playing Dane. When I started with him, at least the way I conceived it, he was somebody who was cast adrift and was looking for some kind of purpose, some kind of meaning, and he was trying to reject his past because of the traumas that he had encountered, the things he had to do as a Black Ops drop Marine and a commander as well, meant he just wanted to leave that behind. But somehow and inevitably, he was called back throughout the adventures that we had to kind of his past. So he had to kind of handle all that. And I think from a player's point of view and thinking about his journey, which is obviously during the year we're looking at has come to kind of an end. I would say, he was wrestling with the trauma and stress of a Black Ops past, only to find purpose and redemption in the service of an Aslan noble's retinue, which is not something that I obviously was remotely expecting, and that came out entirely through the developing relationship with Tia Latora and with our play, and the things that, just like Carl was saying, some of the things and the missions that we went on throughout that year. For me as a player, it was one of the most satisfying character progression journeys that I think I've ever played in any game. And it was particularly satisfying for me to see that end right through, and then to see that end continue, but off camera.
Yeah.
So it's a full arc, and I sort of decided in my mind, and I'm glad you supported me in play, that it was right. It kind of felt like a very complete story, and it was right for him to kind of follow that journey towards the end of last year of play. And although I honestly didn't want to stop playing Dane, but at the same time, I kind of felt I had to let him go. Mm-hmm. So that was Dane. And
so let's stay on that for a moment, just because it's something that I was thinking of as sort of a next question to talk about too, is playing this game later in life than playing it as a teenager, or playing it as an early 20s, right? Like we joke about this, before, but like in our Wednesday night, we are playing a Traveler Adventure right now, because there's players who have not played Traveler before. And there was an interesting comment. Two of the characters are married in it, and they've got backstory in it. Both of the players who were involved with it are either married or in long-term relationships themselves. And it's really fucking funny because both of them have said at different times, like, "Oh, this is going to be so fun." And like it's a different. I think like with a knowing that we've spent our time with this friend and he needs to go somewhere different from where we are. That feels very mature as a something that maybe a younger person might not recognize, because you kind of want to stay with stuff that forever, right? You want to you think that things are going to last forever, but they don't necessarily, and the idea that that character has still a continuing history afterwards, that may be more, I don't know, whatever, may be very different and more action, oriented or whatever. It's a really cool decision that I'm not sure that I think it might speak to some of that maturity of knowing what it's like to be, past 30 and see how when you've got life behind you but you got life ahead of you. It's something that I wouldn't have recognized as a kid playing the game, because I think that I'm fucking 28 in this game now, like I am so old. Whereas like in these games, the characters regularly dumped out of their career. So I may be going a little waxing too much into it, but
No, I think it's true. I think it's true. I mean, I started playing in '82, Traveller, and I was 19 at the time, and I was in university, and one of the things that struck me about the game was just how old all the characters were, and I'm now nearly 62, and I'm massively older than all the characters that I'm playing, even in Traveller. So I hear you.
what are the rest of you guys? What do you think?
Oh, now I know why you were playing an elf in the One Ring.
He was older than me.
What did I see?
I think
Go ahead, Carl.
I think it was very bold. Because you're right. You get attached to your character. You feel like you have a lot more to do, but you're right. And you put out your own podcast recently and talked about that at length, and I thought it was really great. I think it kind of emboldens me to look, if I'm playing a game, do I have a story arc that's going to finish? Can I just retire this character and try something else? And I think it's a really kind of neat way to look at it and make it a real world instead of this kind of hero to zero, type of thing that we tend to do in these games, right? So, it's nice. It's nice to game with you guys. It's nice to game with a group of mature individuals who have those other, not necessarily mechanical, not character progression, from a skills and stuff point of view, but like character development, right? I think it's a cool game. That's why I've stuck with it. So, honestly, because it's like, oh man, it's like now it's like a soap opera is not the word, but it's it is kind of like a series, like a television series, and then you're like, follow these characters and what's going to happen with them, and are we gonna have a spin-off of Dane Lawbreak in the service of a world? I don't know.
You're using Savage Worlds with a loose rethreading of Flash Gordon. Yeah. I mean, that may
Graham,
be the. Go ahead, David.
Graham, do you think it helped for your decision that it's a levelless system? And there's none of that chasing, the next level, that special ability you get at level 16 or anything like that. It's more nuanced, and it's just of the skill set, so you can. There's also that mindset of, if I only get to,
Yeah, I think maybe. I think probably the thing that helped the most is, I mean, this is my take, and I'd be interested to hear what you guys say, but I kind of think you can play Traveller in so many different ways. I've been playing in other games where we've been playing a group of academics in space. We played another one where it's very hard science fiction. We've got a very specific flight window because we've only got so much nuclear fuel and blah, blah, blah. And it was very tight. It's all about skill optimization. And then we've got this campaign. And I would say one of the outstanding features of this game is that it is, I mean, it sounds a bit trite, but it's very role-play heavy. So we are focusing on story, we're focusing on interactions, we're focusing on the impacts that we're having in the games that we play. And I think because the focus, perhaps you're right, it's not a case of level chasing or anything. I suppose the decisions that you take are very much about how can I enhance and make sense of my character in the ongoing narrative that we're all creating. And I think it's a very I describe this as quite a role play heavy, I mean, as they all should be, but it's a very role play heavy campaign, and it's not really focusing on the tech in a way, but the tech obviously enhances the story. And I think because of that general way that we're playing, that probably made it easy to make a decision to say, I think it's time, I think the story's right.
Mm-hmm. Jeff, James, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this is the first game that I played an old character. I don't think we streamed it, but it was the first time we all played Traveller that I remember as friends at Brent's when we did like our gaming reunion thing.
We did stream that, that with your magician.
Okay, yeah, with the magician guy that I made, like an actual old man, like he was, walk with a cane kind of character, and Yeah, I would agree that like I love that about this game, that he ended up being like such a central character and an important part of the story, and it didn't feel out of place or forced or anything. It just like the characters all sort of play the same based on, you know, like David said, where it's much flatter of a system, and so you know, you can feel capable at sort of any age. And I like that the characters come with this baggage of a career that's, you know, either complete or sort of halfway through, and they've made a midlife crisis sort of job change, or, you know, however you want to think of it. I love that part of this game.
Yeah.
I've modeled a lot of character creation that I do with my friends in other games, where I've makeshifted some of my own sort of career path stuff to make, even in D&D, to like push them from making 18-year-old kids, you know, to making, you know, midlife people who have some adventure, and this is more of a, you know.
Yeah.
So I've added that to some of the games I've played with my friends, because I really like it.
From one of our favorite publishers in the channel too, C7, I'll plug Life Well Lived is a supplement they came out for 5th edition last year that does very much that. It introduces a life path mechanic for 5th edition characters. Another, you're clearly in good company there, Jeff, with that thought of bolting it onto 5th edition.
Yeah, I love it.
What about you, James?
One thing I think that has helped this go along is that you were very flexible with the learning rules. Because my take on the system is that you do tend to be a bit inept, and with your with the extra points that we've got much more rounded characters, and I think you'd get out playing it raw. And that helps because you can go along without feeling like a klutz, and you know, you can be what you want to be. You know, I'm good at engineering and not, you know, the engineering guy who's bad at it.
Yeah.
And that really helps in making a character that you can get into more.
Well, and the narrative metacurrency too, I'm really glad. I can't remember if we started playing with luck or if we just did it like shortly after a session or two or mid-session. But it's something I think that there's a number of little instances where like the purchasing of your nuclear fuel, you know, or not fuel, the nuclear, the fissionable materials that you got or whatever from Hilfer, like that was a really good thing. Dane's duel was a really good thing. Thank you again to the generous donors. When Dane just, oh boy, someone really should have thought about how deadly combat is. Who's running this fucking thing? Yeah, like I think that has also done a little bit in that way. The role playing, obviously, of your character is a paramount thing for Dane's satisfying part of this, which made our actual playthrough of this such a satisfying part. But I'll give credit back to the adventure as well, because they try, like, the thing that the module had always was that you're supposed to, I changed a couple of things over the course of the adventure, but it's always been the idea that, like, you want the characters or the crew to care about Tilatoril and his fate by the time you reach that planet. And they give different ways of doing it in it, but the way that played out was even better than I could have anticipated. And then that character arc also played into that satisfying resolution of that module. Because not only did the characters or the crew really like, you know, the character, like the sort of MacGuffin character, you also, like, fucking went a step beyond, and you've made the character live beyond that module, which is really, it shows. I tend to be a very adverse to running pre-written adventures stuff, and I think this might be the best pre-written module I've ever run. Because, and that's including Night Below, because I've had to, we haven't concluded Night Below yet. I don't think ever, but realistically. So we're almost through book 1, and we're 5 years in. I think we're but this is, it was a really satisfying. It's given me reason to think that, like, you know what, like, fuck it. I mean, maybe there are ways that I can make modules work with me, particularly with when players are given the opportunity to wrap their stories into it. So it's an exceptional event module too. Absolutely, anyone who's watched this through will have seen the resolution. But if you're running for your own group, I absolutely love this module. We have one more character to talk about, though. What about Laris? What's Laris's arc been thus far? Or how?
Yeah, so Laris I haven't quite worked out yet. So I wanted to play somebody very different to Dane, and that's not particularly difficult to do. But I picked somebody that I felt was quite different, and I would like to try and bring out more the sort of Darien perspective on things. I've made a start, but I think there's probably more that I could do with Laris. In terms of his journey, I need to think a bit more about his journey and where that's going. He's far away from the Darien Confederation. There are reasons for that in his backstory. The fact that he's now in a crew, very capable crew, and we're clearly going somewhere, and we're probably going to be, through the patrons that we have, exploring sort of new worlds and new adventures. That's going to take him further and deeper into Drinax and the associated sectors. And I have to work out, I probably still have to work out, how does he feel about that? Where does he actually want to go? I mean, it's a lucrative and interesting and exciting group of characters to be involved in, but what does he actually want? And I don't think I've quite got there, actually, if I'm to be fair. But it's nice playing somebody sort of different with a different mindset. And I have found occasionally, you know how even recently we've had sessions where it's actually been tactical. It's actually required sort of a military sort of mindset. It's about working out how to take somebody out, and I have to admit, I wanted to say more, but as a character, I've thought, no, Dane would be all over that. I don't think Laris would be, and so I've just tried to shut up a bit more. So it's been quite interesting.
That's a good point. There are ways like it's like in mysteries or other things too. This is where metagaming is perfectly fine. Like if you want to talk stuff through from your perspective, the player, that your character's not necessarily adding in, you can feel free to put your 2 cents in, right? Like we're all playing just because course. Your characters, especially hyper specialized characters like we have in the crew, if your character is the chatty guy, but you want to chat about like the shooty stuff, you can, or the converse. Everybody can obviously weigh in on whatever they like in it. I don't feel that you need to stay in character all the time for it, because we often do that in other games as well, where if someone's planning something, we can say like, oh, so-and-so's talking to whatever else, but like we can open up to the table, like anybody can offer suggestions for things. Paradar does that often, and I think with games where spotlight time is, you linger longer with spotlight time, you kind of have to have that, because otherwise it's just a matter of one player sitting around watching, or the rest of the group watching one player play the game for an extended period of time. So that's been really interesting. I guess what, shoot, I had my next question in mind, but I've completely forgotten. I should probably write stuff down because I've got my notes and whatnot here. So we now find ourselves 2 years into the Traveler campaign, and a truly ongoing game too. We hadn't expressly said before that we were going to be playing past the Borderland Run, but we now find ourselves bopping around the Trojan Reach. Once again, it's the terrible second season where they're doing the same fucking story all over again with slight changes. They're working for an Aslan noble trying to find a lost son again. Who writes this stuff? Jesus.
It's the same actor in slightly different makeup.
Exactly. The director is a really good friend of the guy, so he just comes back again as another thing. Jeez. What's his name? Jeffrey Combs. Is that Jeffrey Combs again? Jesus Christ. As far as the what do you call it? What are the moments for the last year, I guess, that stand out for you from your crewmates? As moments where sort of the promise of the RPG and the story and whatnot really kind of hit the road. The rubber of it, I guess, if I want to make that metaphor make sense. Body slamming this into the road. Well, what do you guys think? Have there been any particular moment of role play or decision making or thing that will exempt Dane's going off with Taylor Toro from that, because that's obviously the most dramatic character change. But we all sort of as players knew that was coming as well. Mm-hmm. So for the viewers at home, that may have been a more substantial development. What do you guys think?
I think for me, I think the revelation and the examination of Jeff's character of Alonzo and the psionics, right? So I think that's been pretty cool. I mean, for me, I'm a long time traveler player. I think that just kind of feeds so much into the lore, and then you can add in so many things. You've added, alien creatures and now Jodani conspiracy, which totally sits with my character's interests and the player's interest here too, is examining the wider verse. And I think it's really cool that now this is kind of part of it, right? Everyone always looks for that fabled psionic institute, and we're kind of doing it. And I think that's really cool. And, I hope, my character probably doesn't want him to embrace it, but the player certainly does.
Nice. Anyone else?
It's a minor one, but I enjoyed everyone's reaction to Mother Candle.
Yes.
They've had the word airlock mentioned that many times.
I was mentioning
you do fantastic NPCs. That's
thanks. I was mentioning to the players the night below, there's a character that they met named Lord Carmen that they did a job for early on in the thing, and they returned back with a flawed magic ring in that campaign. And it was kind of, you remember, I don't know, there's an old Simpsons episode where Mr. Burns delivers $1 billion bill to Fidel Castro, and then he hands it to him, and he's like, well, can I have the dollar back? And he's like, what dollar? And the idea, what happened is Carmen got the ring and is like, well, I'm keeping this because you were paid for your job and this is spoils. The players were visibly pissed at this development. And I routinely have people, we had, like, just before Christmas, someone posted on there, like, I had to walk away from the stream. I was so angry at Lord Carmen for this, and then came back and carried on. I am thrilled to hear that Mother Candle is coming up on a close second for Lord Carmen in terms of... Oh my goodness. It's one of the things that's fun about the resources you have access to for this is they can give you some, like that was a random crew like that, and Solomon Chase, the thing you guys are doing right now. Like there is such a thing as too much. Like if every single jump has this length of story that is derailing you and whatever else, then that suddenly becomes what the campaign is, and you lose the overall focus. But I don't know. Like you guys can feel free to tell me when it gets too much. But like the diversion on Hilfer was so fucking fun, and it had such an impact on the campaign overall. Ditto for this now. And it wasn't my intent for you guys to be at the court of King, Oldeb once again, now bringing to his attention Zodani spies. But it sure worked out that way. So like the emergent story elements of the game is just, it's an incredible part of Traveler and the whole bopping around the universe. And while it's not expressly said to be like, this is how you should run it in the game, the fact that there's so many encounter tables and there's so many products that give you easy improvised play, I think that it certainly gives you everything you need in order to run a game that way. In that story game kind of play to see what happens kind of style.
Yeah.
Yeah. Am I the only one who's getting feedback, by the way?
Oh, that'd be Carl. Carl's not muted in Roll20. Okay. I think you refreshed in Roll20, Carl. So.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. No, it happens to me all the time.
Yep.
I think just one of the interactions I enjoyed was Dane's interaction with Dr. Ilias, just sort of trying to sort of seek some sort of medical route and escape from his various sort of hang-ups and problems. That was quite nice. It was just like almost like a side into play that wasn't actually to do with whatever we were doing. And I think being able to develop sort of interactions which feels like sort of family crew kind of a thing is kind of nice to have that as just a background thing that happens. And we had a few of those. Also the sort of planning stuff that Carl mentioned in terms of some of the mission stuff and all that. It was just great. It was just great to have all that, and I enjoyed those.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, agreed. The sort of the quiet moments, or when we're just around the crew table and discussing what next, or what to do, or we go and rescue the girl from the whatever is with what's going on, but let's do something good or do something right, or that adds to the characters and to the feel of it being a crew, and as you say, sort of like family rather than just people who work together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and it's something that. Oh, good, Graham.
No, great, it's fun. It's a point that's been raised a few times so far, so I've just picked up on it, which is about pace. And the way that the campaign has been paced is interesting. I think I might have learnt something from the way that this has been paced. And it's what I would call a considered pace. So we're not rushing between action points as much as we want action. And actually, it's been given the space to mature in between those sort of more frenetic, obvious combat sort of moments. And it hasn't been rushed. But they've also felt full. So it's not that it's lagged. It's just that it's been given a bit of space for our characters to interact with each other and interact with obviously the Marvis NPCs and so on. Mm-hmm. But it's felt, and that's perhaps why when I say it's a role play heavy game, probably part of that is because the space has been given to enable that to happen, and that's a pacing aspect, which I don't know, maybe I could probably learn a thing or two about from that.
I think there are certain games, Traveler I think is quite good for this, where the intrusion of the rules doesn't provide a disruption to, like, sometimes you want to have a variety in what you're doing in any RPG, I think, but Traveler, because combat's so quick and resolution of things are relatively so quick, you don't have I love our Warhammer Fantasy game, and I love the grit of that too. We're 4 sessions into a kind of quasi dungeon crawl right now with that campaign that has otherwise been a relatively investigative role play heavy game. It's been a lot of fun, and it's been a very different thing. And that game does have a lot of really great, juicy crunch in it. That if you take the time to get your head around it, it does make for a satisfying, change of gameplay. But if your expectation of a campaign is, this is what it's about, that does take you out of that regular space for a considerable amount of time because of the depth of combat or the depth of the combat system. This allows us to sort of get in and get out of almost everything at whatever pace we choose to, which is a really... When I was telling the pitch for running Traveler with the guys in the Wednesday group who had not played it before, I mentioned that the thing I had always thought before with Traveler is the standout is the character generation. Character generation is incredible in Traveler, especially if you're doing it as a crew together. It's a lot of fun, but the gameplay is so exceptional as well, and part of that is a huge part of it is obviously the players you're playing with and how you're choosing to, move through the story in there. But a lot of the core assumptions of what the framework is, all that comes from Traveler, right? That you're part owners in a ship and you got bills to pay, what are you going to do to pay those bills? There's a wide open, universe with a variety of ways you can earn some cash. How are you going to go do it? And that's a very cool... It's not baked in as a clear, sitting around a tavern in a medieval setting, being hired by someone for a quest or whatever. But it's a pretty fucking hard, this is what you need to do. How you go about doing it is your own problem. But broadly speaking, this is what the default assumption is. You got to pay that fucking ship mortgage if you want to stay in the sky. So what are you going to do? And that's a bit of, I think, clear mission statement that is underappreciated maybe about the game, the actual gameplay of it, because then it allows you to discuss about, okay, well, how are we going to go about doing this, which requires you to interrogate the world, requires you to look at your backstory, it requires you to take on jobs that may be more complicated than you think, and then you get, you know, kind of further into the job, and you're like, God damn it, like we spent so much fuel and time, and like we got to see this through because we got to get a payday out of this. I may be spoiling some stuff here, but the just kidding. Yeah. What about the rest of you guys? What are you? Is there something about Traveler, the game itself? I'm trying not to ask leading questions here.
Oh, right. Okay, counselor, we will not ask.
Well, actually, here's a good point. We did do. Yeah, exactly. I don't want to assume. I'm trying to be very careful with the more open questions. But one of the things that was interesting, we ran our first war story in this game too. We had that where we played to Homeland. Homeland.
Yeah. Yeah, we used Homeworld.
Homeworld.
Yeah, the 2D20 system, right?
Yeah, which was boy,
David and I.
Yeah, I'd be hard pressed to think of a better implementation of a war story than the way that one came out in the wash. I
really enjoyed about that it was nicely tied in with the actions of the other groups, of seeing them from the other side, like how, you know, Dane is now some sort of boogeyman ghost monster that everyone is like terrified of. It didn't feel just like, oh, I'm going to show you how brutal Dane is. It felt like it's like lived in, and it feels realistic in a way that community has responded to this event.
Yeah. Well, I'll credit our buddy Jason Hobbs. I played in a one of his open table ones. I can't remember what the island is called. Z something or other. But anyway,
the Kamada stuff.
The Kamada stuff. Yeah. I played in one Kamada game, and one of the neat things in that game was when we were out, we came across the body of a basilisk that a player in a previous session had killed, and I was like, "That's incredible." Like, that is so fucking cool that this world persists beyond the actions of just my character. And I can see that there's a reminder that there's a wider world out there. And that's something that I thought, there was something that was rattling around in my head ever since, is that the feeling of how the actions of the characters have changed the world around them, right? Like, not just seeing that. So it proved to be a really easy opportunity to flesh out a little bit more about Hilford, do a little bit of foreshadowing with something else. No spoilers for anyone who has not watched that episode yet. And also to give, I mean, it was kind of fun to see you guys dive right into like a whole different group of people in different circumstances who aren't travelers per se going around, but like people on a vibrant planet who have their place in society, going out and interacting with it. And we were doing a lot of improvised stuff in that because of those travel rules from Actum Cthulhu. So, and we had our first Fang Dragon.
Yes.
The Space Fang Dragon. But yeah, so that was interesting seeing the world through that different lens. I think the 2-player part of that really helped because 2D20 with only 2 players, they're constantly getting to make interesting decisions in the rules rather than watching people talk about rules mechanics or how they're going to spend momentum or things like that, which I find with larger groups. I'm a very impatient TM, notwithstanding how long I guess the stories take to roll out. But as far as task resolution and combat and stuff like that, I tend to get a little distracted when things are taking too long. Without merit. And I don't know, the 2 players that it really, really sang. I felt like you guys were engaged with the mechanics and the story the whole time along. Yeah.
That was really fun. And it does, I mean, I guess it's part of the beauty of Traveler. And I guess I don't mind. I think a player of mine said recently, because I said, oh, I'm sorry, this is the main story I wanted to do, but now you're on a side quest. That's how we ended the session. They say, isn't life about side quests? And that's what I love about Traveler, is because it's like, it seems like all is a side quest. And some of the main story was amazing, but some of these side quests have been, really good and have brought a lot out in the different characters. And that's what I really enjoy about Traveler. And really, I think that's something my players said in my own Traveler campaign. It's like their favorite thing is when we get to a world and something weird happens, like something random happens, and then we interact with it, So I think it's a pretty cool thing about Traveler. You could just do this hex crawl space trucking, and I think the Borderlands Run is really good about that, because like it is kind of like you go around for different places, things can happen, but we do have this main story, and I've really taken that to heart in how you run this game into my Enemy Within campaign, and give a lot of the Warhammer Fantasy and give the players a lot of flexibility so we can just play. And then now we have like a term at the table called, we're doing some Warhammer shenanigans, which means heavy role playing, and something funny happens at the end. So like in my translating that, and I think this is what's happened in this game, is it's definitely me as a GM, it's made me more confident to kind of just let the game go, let the players role play and get into it. Because that's kind of what they want to do. I mean, we always like the action, but we want the action in our favor. We don't want random encounter after random encounter. We want to like build up to like in a TV show. We build up the investigation, we build up slowly, different things happen. There might be a minor scuffle here, but then we have the big fight that it's at the end of the session, type of thing, or at the end of an arc. And I think that's what Traveler is really beautiful about that. So
I think sort of to that point, something that I really enjoyed is just the passengers, taking on passengers that we take from one place to another and just getting embroiled in their nonsense and their trouble. It is interesting. That's
I think it doesn't feel like a side quest, right? Yes, obviously the main thing was getting Territorial to Tayok, but that first when we went to from Spurl to Argona, and the shenanigans on board, that didn't feel like a side quest or something tagged on. It felt just this is a normal day in the life of a crew of a bar trader, right? Having these interesting passengers, and then something weird happened, and there's an assassination attempt. It just felt a natural part of the flow of the story.
And that
it made me think like you could almost just do a campaign of like Space Bus or whatever. Just, all the adventure just takes place as you pick up different people and deal with them and their.
It's a good thing to
problems.
It's a good lesson that I've drawn from it is that you don't need to force the narrative structure onto the story, because the players will go there. We're pattern-seeking mammals. We want to make sense of things that are going on, and I think that the players will find a way. Like Helfer, that whole thing with Helfer, I thought we were leaving the planet, and I was like, all right, well, we're not going to delve into this stuff. That's fine. I'll stuck it away and I'll use it in some other thing. And then at the last minute, you're like, someone was like, maybe we should find out what those guys are doing. And it was like one conversation, and then that just led in that whole different thing. It did it with Solomon Chase. I think we saw it because the name came from the table, and everybody was like, "Oh my god! Like, there's no more RPG name than Solomon Chase." So I had to have something that was fit in for what they had for the random thing. But then it ended up being this really great opportunity to talk about Alonso's past and talk about the some other bigger things that are going on in that. So, trusting that the players are going to make interesting things happen, and this responding to that with hopefully interesting things yourself this game is exceptionally easy to run in that capacity. And this, I think, the streamlined mechanics also really helps in that. It is not something. I made the pitch to some players last year about using Traveler for our annual Star Wars game. They're kind of like, well, I don't know if the simple rules, like we don't need the simple rules for this. And I underappreciated that is one of the things that keeps you in the story and keeps things moving, because you're not, and it's not to say that I love complicated games as well. Look forward to the channel rebranding as a Dark Eye only early in 20. but in contrast to other games where it does, you have to spend more time engaged in other like combat or things like that, where it doesn't move quite as quick, or even just if the nature of the combat is much bigger and you want to engage with it on a granular level. I love the granular combat in Warhammer Fantasy. It feels just like it's such a good game in the sense that it has it just on the heroic side of grim, but it feels pretty dangerous most of the time. But it does take a lot of time to get through that stuff because you need to pay attention to all those bits. I wouldn't want this in this game. I would not want that because it would get in the way of all the other stuff that is going on where you're spending time figuring out what your characters want, who's on board your ship, what you want to do, and then the random bullshit that happens over the course of travel and trade.
Another aspect of the traveler mechanics, if we're looking at the mechanics of the game, which I think works really well. Yes, it's fundamentally a very simple game to play with lots of sort of sub games all the way around it. But the number of times we've used the task chain mechanics has been extensive. In almost every other session, we've got some sort of task chain. And one of the things I love about the task chain is that it's, mechanically, it's still very simple and it's an extrapolation of the core game. But the thing I really like about it is it's a way of bringing all of us into the action and supporting each other for the final sort of outcome. And it's just a nice way of sort of doing more of the montage-y kind of stuff, but with a mechanical consequence and a feeling that your characters are actually making a difference to the final outcome. So task chains are just, I think, are just great, and we've used them such a lot, haven't we, in the game?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, every time we jump, right? I mean, it's kind of built in. It's built in to the core of the game, which I think is really neat.
Yeah. James, Jeff, any thoughts? I want us louder folks to talk over you guys.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. This is one of my favorite games, and I love coming back to it. I don't know. And this is a great crew, and the story just develops so well with this crew that, I'm always having a good time when I'm here. And so.
And I would say the same thing for me, too. It's one of those games I absolutely love. I love running all the games, don't get me wrong. This is a different kind of prep this is something more like our Paradar game, where that's not true. Any of our ongoing long-term campaigns, there's prep that needs to get done, but once it's done, I just need to reference that stuff, and it's going to pay off dividends for my prep for each individual session going forward. And I don't feel the need to make sure we're getting back to that whole scripted thing before. I don't feel that I need to script out, oh, this is what's going to happen this session. There's this thing and whatnot. I'll have some things you guys talked about that might happen, but trust that we're going to have other stuff that's going to chew up the time. From a day job, analogy, anytime that, if a court reporter had a dime for every time a lawyer said, well, I said one more question, and then we'll be done, and then proceeds to ask 2 more hours of questions, they would be very, very rich people. Because you can see them say this, I have one more question, and you can see them roll eyes now on Zoom, rightfully so. In the same way, shit always takes longer than what you think it's going to, and it's awesome in this campaign that I don't feel like I need to make sure I've got enough stuff to get through a session. I know we're going to take time. And tell me if I've got this wrong, but the planning for actions or how you're going to approach things or whatever else, that stuff doesn't feel as, it immediately falls apart the way the sort of Shadowrun joke does. Because Shadowrun is sort of the go-to punching bag for we're going to plan a whole bunch of stuff that's going to immediately go out the window as soon as we get to whatever run is, because something's going to go wrong. And then all that planning is all for naught. This feels like you guys, when you do plan things through and talk things through, largely gets executed the way that you intend.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you think of the raid on Dr. Bancroft's lab, if you think of the exercise, I don't think it's called that, the action on Hilfer, breaking into that into what's his name, the family friend on Sync.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think and that lad, we feel quite competent. I feel because none of that. I'm a gifted physician, and then 5 people have died because of botched rolls or anything. It feels like we plan something. There's complications, but we don't have to jeopardize everything and start from scratch. I also feel when we plan things, it's not about the mechanics.
Yeah.
Weirdly, as it might be in other games where I have visibility, it's just like I don't often even look at my skill rankings or anything. It's just like this is the plan, and then whoever can support, will be competent enough in that skill to support that action that we require, rather than going, ooh, no, I'm not proficient in stealth, or I'm not. It just feels very natural in terms of, okay, we need this and this and this, and we have the skills, and we'll rely on our talent and a little bit of luck now and then to see us through.
Everyone leveled up in Recon, right?
Yep. No, I think that kind of goes back to what James was saying about our competency levels. I think it's been a really, I mean, we were pretty good in that we got a lot of, in the Traveler, in the initial thing, we got a lot of, we were long-term career type people, but still we're pretty competent. And I think I really like that feel, and, our plans come together, and I mean, yeah, we're expecting the worst, but I feel like we have those contingencies, and that's really because of competence. And honestly, I think it's a player skill, truth be told, and I maybe you don't agree, Kevin, but I think you're like one of those, I don't know if it's one of those yes GMs, and you kind of let us do stuff and ask questions, and hey, is this going to work or not? And it works really well. That's why we get things done.
Yeah, and I try.
We get things done,
well, because what I don't like saying no for no reason, or if I do say no, I want to make sure I was right about what I said. I'm going to get things wrong, because like we all fucking do. But I think one important skill is recognizing when you got something wrong and saying, okay, hold on, let me think about that. You can take a moment in the middle of a session and think about whether, is this something that would happen, especially for a fictional world, when it's a judgment call in the world of whether or not, like, oh, could I do X? And your immediate reaction is like, well, no, of course not. And then you think like, well, hold on, maybe, I don't know, let me think it through, and you don't need to get it right the first time, right? Like, you can always say like, you know what, I thought, like, as an example, in our Traveler game on Wednesday, the Traveler adventure we're playing, one of the players, like, it's a fixed length adventure. We're only going to play this for a couple of months, and then we're going to go on back to D&D once again. And one of the players, as we're talking about stuff, excitedly says, oh, we've got room in the cargo bay, we could put a hospital thing there. And I'm like, well, no, that'll cost money. And as soon as the session ended, I'm like, what if fucking, they have infinite amounts of money. They have as much money as I want to give them, because it's a fucking, so I was like, no, of course you can have that. Like, that's a great idea. Why did I say no to it? And the thing is, when part of the job of the GM is the referee, right? Is trying to adjudicate not only the rules, but also the setting. And those two things, the keeping the game going and saying yes, sometimes gets at odds with the rules part of it. And that's, I think it's important to be open to saying, like, okay, I got this wrong. I'm okay with doing whatever that you proposed. I just, your instinctive reaction, particularly if you've played with players who take advantage of rules or take selective choice of rules. No one on the channel does this, but I think we've all played with folks like that before, where you're like, okay, you're not playing the same game we are here, because you're just trying to fucking win. And like, everyone wins in this game. What are you doing? So that's where the rules part of it tends to, that is definitely a shortcoming of mine. Is sometimes I get a little too hung up on the rules of it. Fortunately for the game like this, there's very few things I can get, wrong. I still get them wrong, but there are less things to stumble across, which is going to make our transition to the Dark Eye even more. I'm going to have some very angry German messages to translate on YouTube. Oh my goodness.
I blame Graham.
Yeah.
Well, just as long
right.
as you get the sleeping ground right, you'll be okay.
Yeah. What was Ingolf? Yeah. That's. I don't want to get to talking about that too much, but Ingolf and David commenting on it, and I'm like, okay, so there's fucking merit here. It's a game I've not yet explored, so we'll see. But
Anyway, quick, move on.
Yeah, exactly. Before my fucking Noble Knight cart becomes unreasonable. Why is there a beeping sound as the truck is backing up? Yeah, could you see this campaign, like a sci-fi campaign like this? How do you think this would have worked differently with different rules? One of the things I often do with the war stories, like we did with the Homeworld one, is I like to see it through the lens of different rules sometimes. But I think for our Homeworld adventure that we played this past year, that one was a very specific, more scripted kind of like, little journey, and then there's some story you get out of it. How do you guys think the campaign would be different had we played it with, say, 2d20 as an ongoing thing, or the age system, or fucking GURPS, or...
I think to riff off what we've just had in chat, I think if we were playing with the Phoenix Command system, we'd probably be on the first story still.
Yeah. That is something, what feeds my impatience is the cognizance of the time, right? Like it's, if you have, I'm always at odds with this because I love a crunchy combat system. Like I'm a Rollmaster kid from way back in the day, but when you have so many hours to play a month and you're spending that time in combat, you better hope that that's a really, really interesting and consequential combat to have, because that's what you chose to spend the time doing, as opposed to whatever else you did with in other games. But anyway, I don't want to. Go ahead, Grant.
No, I think we'd have done different things. So I think one of the things about Traveller, so some of the things that we've focused on in the game, in a slightly background way, is because Traveller supports it. And I'm thinking particularly the whole trade aspect of it. I mean, yes, sure. Sure, if you really wanted to, you could run the entire thing using Homeworld, and we could have had a very similar game, to be quite honest, as long as you'd have adapted it and sort of bent it slightly, and we would just use the core 2d20 resolution mechanic. It probably wouldn't have been that different. But I think if we're talking about taking a game as written and using that and playing to its strengths, I think we would have done different things. So the whole trade thing's been interesting. It's fully supported in Traveller. It's a core part. It's a core sub-game that people often play. We've had a background spreadsheet, to almost like a sort of double entry system where we kind of know how much money we've got. It's pushed us in some amusing ways into some decisions on spend. It means that we've focused on certain things. So my take would be you could run this game using very different systems, and it probably would have enlightened play in different ways, and we would have probably still got to a similar endpoint, as it were. But the journey to get there might have been consequentially different because of the focus of the mechanics. I don't know what you guys think, but it's felt very Traveller because, of course, we're using the underpinning mechanics of Traveller.
Yeah, I feel like with a lot of other systems we would possibly have focused more on combat, just because often you have 2 pages on this and then 5 chapters on the combat rules, and then whereas in Travel it feels like it's just another 3-page part of the rules that's not particularly called out or more important or less important than other aspects of it. Because I feel with a lot of possibly other rule set, and they would have been fun, no doubt about that. But then maybe certain aspects like space combat or clear combat would have played more of a role, and maybe some of our encounters, like the rescue and Hilfer, would have turned out very, very differently.
Yeah,
because we would have had a lot of different tactical decisions combat-wise. That in Traveller, it's just it's an option, but it's along all the others.
Yeah,
and for the trade part, I really liked that about Traveller because when I ran Coriolis, one of my players was hellbent on playing a merchant. which was sort of slightly at odds with the rest of the gang. They were more sort of into exploration side of things, but so I had to sort of improvise trading aspects because Coriolis has merchants in the setting, but not really rules for clear. Whereas here with Traveler, I think it's very well supported to have that if players want to focus on it, and then I guess you can as easily also just tone that down if you're focusing more on other aspects of the setting. But I think that's very well supported.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'd pick something like FFG, Edge of the Empire, and sanded off all of the setting. Because I think, but as opposed to Traveller, where you've added in a lot more skills, so we've been more competent, I think it'd be the other way around, right? FFG works better if you are very slow in progressing.
Yeah, because those dice will
bloated too quick.
Yeah, we found that in our Jeff played in our Star Wars campaign that ran for about 2 years, and it by the end there was some really you never knew what you were getting with the dice results from that game. Not a bad thing
being
necessarily.
Quite narrative, I think it would have worked well in this situation.
And at the higher, and it's worth saying at the higher end of it. To start with, that game, I feel like that feels more Star Wars. Those, like the starter set for Edge of the Empire, I've had sessions with that. I've run it 3 times now. Every one of those has felt more Star Wars than any other Star Wars RPG I've run. It's just been exceptional. Like, there are results you get from that particular game that don't come in other games. But it is very story focused, and that is what Star Wars suits. So, yeah, I think you guys are right as well. That like what would have ended up being the focus of what was happening on camera would be very different too. And it's interesting that it's one of the things that people talk about Call of Cthulhu, about its enduring kind of not quality necessarily. It's not that it's not a quality game, but like the enduring draw of that game is that it does nothing more than what it needs to from its perspective. You've got your investigative skills. You've got a background way of seeing that shit go up as you make successful rolls. Or I can't remember if it's successful or unsuccessful rolls that you get your experienced chicks. But however the skills go up, it does so in the background without you like theory crafting your character. So your focus is on your character's backstory, your character's place in the investigation, and the investigation itself. So it without burdening itself with too much extra stuff, it focuses everything on what is, all the mechanics on what is making that gameplay interesting and engaging. Have you used the chase rules yet from 7th, David, in your game? I can't remember.
Not yet.
Not yet, okay.
I use them. They're, I don't know. I kind of prefer like almost like the Savage Worlds in a way, but I don't. The chase rules work. I did run like a chase through the streets of Istanbul, formerly Constantinople.
And they might be giants in my head for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Was that using Cthulhu Dark?
Yeah, using the Call of Cthulhu 7. Yeah, I did like I was doing like a pulp game. So I mean they're fine, but I think, I think that the rules lightedness, it doesn't seem that way because it's like the people are either put off or they really love the career path system that Traveler does, right?
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, it's gonna be really complicated. We got to do all this stuff, but it's a lot of build up. But then the rules and gameplay are not. It's just 2d6, hit a target number. We got modifiers, and it's it's very simple math. They have really cool mechanics like that path chain. So the system, I've always liked a game where the system never gets in the way, and I agree with Call of Cthulhu. The system doesn't get in the way. There's other games like that, and Traveler, this game especially, they do not get in the way, and you can just improvise if you need to. As a GM, we can do crazy things as a player, and all we need is a 2d6 and figure out what skill. The hardest thing is to figure out what skill we're going to use, what skill attribute combination we're going to use, right?
Yeah. So. I like the cohesiveness of the setting as well. Like using, I'm typically someone who's adverse to using a like overbuilt up setting because I don't want to have to do fucking homework in it. But that isn't the case here because of how slow the pace of travel is. I've got time between to look up, you know, if I need to look up a couple of worlds in a sector, I can jot down what the interesting tidbits are about that and communicate that to the players relatively easily. But I can find it, right? And if I choose to change things, that's fine, but it's there and accessible to me through the books or through the website, through the wiki. And that is really fucking cool, because in a similar way where we see emergent gameplay at the table, away from the table, I'll read stuff and be like, oh, that's fucking great. Like, I didn't think about that, but that is great. And then incorporate it into the, you know, the ongoing game. It does world, which is a way of saying, I think it does like world building in a way that is mindful of how you're playing the game, as opposed to the sometimes disconnect between building up really cohesive worlds and then also having a game that's connected to it. I find like we had a lot of fun with Castles and Crusades, and their default setting of Erda, like, just fucking kill me with the Silmarillion. Like, it is so detailed that is just, it's impenetrable, and I don't have the patience to read 100 pages of fan fiction effectively about this fucking setting. And I'm sure it's really well thought out, and it's a really interesting thing, I'm certain, because there's a lot of people who enjoy that stuff. But for a game, like, give me something that I can use at the fucking table, which this is what this does, I think, quite well.
Yeah, I think as someone who's never played Traveller before this campaign, and seeing as it's been around for so long and has this massive sprawling universe, it's one of the games that I think is also testament to my co-players, is I don't feel like I'm missing out or not getting the full picture because I've not read 30 years of Traveller history. I'm not as familiar with the Third Imperium or these aspects, or, you know, so it just feels like there's enough there to get the gist of it and have fun with it without having to do your homework and read up on like the story of Drinax or the history. It just feels like there's enough there for me to feel like I know what's going on. I get the big picture, and I never feel like, oh, I'm such a noob. I'm missing layers of fun or of excitement because I haven't that background to the game.
So a part that is a huge credit to James, Carl, and Graham rolling with whatever either I've changed or I've got wrong. So that's a big thing too, right?
I mean,
like,
so big, right?
Yeah. So that's a big thing. And I don't mean,
I've been in games.
Yeah,
I've been in games that were like based on published franchises, and where people were like mega fans, and it killed the buzz at one stage.
100%.
People start getting into the this isn't quite correct, you know. In this year, that I'm like, it's a game. I don't care. I just want to have fun at the table.
David, would you like to play some Warhammer 40k?
40k players are pretty, I will say, as far as fan bases go, like, for just based on comments we've received, like 40k has been pretty good. It's people wanting to share enthusiasm about it, not like correcting what we got wrong necessarily, which is really great. But it's interesting you say that, because I mentioned this on my year in review, but like, running licensed settings there's always the consideration of like, okay, like, what fucking theme park stuff do I want to include in this, right? Like, if I'm running Star Wars, what stuff do I want to include with the Jedi or whatever else? With this kind of setting, I don't feel that as an imperative for designing the adventures or running the things, to make sure we've got something Star Wars or something Star Trek or whatever the hell in the game. It's a huge advantage having it just be an actual, you know, a game that's been designed or setting for a game, as opposed to something that is repurposed from fiction, which is a totally different way of, you know, it serves a different role than what it does in a game. So is that what I want to credit you guys for, and there's something else, but I've forgotten what it is right now. I'm sure it'll come back to me. What about any other games you guys think of that would have given a substantially similar outcome, or a dramatically different outcome, or ones that you would have put on a wish list for war stories?
I think in terms of similar outcome, Stars Without Number would probably have been, because it also uses the 2d6 for its skills. So it has a few more special abilities, and the psionics are way different from this. but you could sort of tone that down. But I think in terms of the skills itself, it's very, very similar and possibly inspired by Traveler. I have a feeling now having played both games and run South Without Number, because it also uses a 2d6 with a maximum of, I think, plus 4 from skill level. So it's that nice sort of bounded, very easy to use.
Carl, what do you think about, because it's one I've got and I want to play, and I know that you are running it. What do you think about Alternity?
Oh, well, yeah, I think Alternity could work because they do have like the Star Drive and it is space opera, and they even have a StarCraft version. I think Alternity, again, it's like, it also has degrees of success, which the game has as well. So I think that could probably work. It's another relatively systems light, but a lot of adaptation, and I think that's what's great about Traveler. And I think, and I was going to say about the Traveler universe, I know people like, sometimes I've heard people, I don't know, they're blasphemous when they say that this is Mark Miller's fanfic and it's whatever, but it's so big, so it doesn't matter, and things change, and that's why I think I have played Traveler since 81 or so with the reprint, but you know what, they change things all the time. In every single Spinward Marches book, I'm sure the things are not accurate, so things change with the times. It's rumor, we don't know, the whole communication thing, so it's your Traveler universe, and Mark Miller has always said that, hey, it's your Traveler universe, thank you for buying my stuff, this is a framework, do whatever you want with it. So that's why I like this with Traveler property, I'm not, it sucks that David's had that experience, and I have too, like with Forgotten Realmsers and not really Trekkies, I think, or Star Wars people, but
yeah.
Sometimes,
James has had the converse of Star Trek, of like, let's make something as least Star Trek as we possibly can in this game.
Edgelord Star Trek, which is my
Oh, it's Section 31 that's coming out, exactly.
Yeah, that's when I have to take people out the back and shoot them. And come back. Sorry, we're playing with one less player today.
Because I'm in a because it's a game that the players, you guys collectively, the roster had picked as one of the top 6 games. I've been looking at Fading Suns again, and Fading Suns in some ways reminds me a bit of what I love about Starfinder, the Starfinder setting, because it's like squint and you can recognize what they're drawing from, but it's really its own thing. Like the Starfinder setting transcends whatever the inspirational source material is, in the same way that D&D transcends Howard and Tolkien and Lieber and whatnot. And Fading Suns being written with, like, you can see a bit of Dune in there, you can see a bit of 40K in there, but transcending it to be its own thing, it seems very exciting for me, because I love that when love set things where they're trying to make a complete game for you to play as a role-playing game, not like adapting. Although I'm looking up right now, one adapted game that was a lot of fun this year, that this is an aside, we haven't played in the chat, Fallout. Fallout's a really fucking good game. I think the Modiphius Fallout, the handful of times I've run it, have been a lot of fun. That plays a fair bit faster than the others. So maybe that might be a good chassis to use, although it's level-based. But anyway, what other games? For War Stories, any jump out? Alternity is, I'm looking at that on my shelf right now too. We ran one session of it with Darren, and I can't remember who else played in it. I want to say maybe Robert, but we played a one shot, with like a pickup session with it, and it's an interesting game. Yeah, there's a couple of things. Making characters. Thank God it didn't win the Rise of the Runelords thing, because setting aside making running that game for the first time with advanced powers and whatnot, Alternity came in second. We ran as Zweihander instead, but creating characters in Alternity, I'm sure there's a spreadsheet out there for it, and I'm going to have to learn how to use it, because it is it's a fucking numbers grind in order to when you're doing it at the time with one character, I'm sure it's fine, and you're not doing it all the time. So like we were talking before we went live about Dark Eye having a great, an enormous amount of complexity for leveling characters or generating characters, Alternity would give it a run for its money. There's a lot of charts that have changing numbers and stuff in it, so that is a bit of a pain, but the gameplay itself is really interesting with the 4 possible levels of outcome from any given role and tying combat into that with 3 different levels of wounds in it. It's an interesting...
that...
Go ahead, Carl.
I mean, I think it didn't seem like that tough, right? I think that's a really interesting... That mechanic, too, is really interesting, I thought, with the stun, the wounds, and the mortal designations. I thought it was... Yeah, that's unfortunate. I did not know that it's unfortunate that the character creation is long and hard, but I think the gameplay works.
It's not insurmountable.
There's a lot of games out there, right? Like Hero System, right?
Well, you know what it is? Oh, absolutely. What it is about the game in play, it's, I imagine, very quick because you're only doing it every now and then. And the way it works is like you get a certain number of XP and then you erase it all and you add one more slot. And then you get the one higher than that and you erase it all and you get more. So like there's this ever escalating number that you need to get before you get your next advancement. And when you get that, you just spend those points to advance your character. That, in the regular course of play, is probably a perfectly manageable, lots of interesting options. Making 6 pre-gens with it would have been a lot of work. So
I think a game that might produce a similar feel, but is a little different, is M Space. Which is a Mithras RuneQuest-y kind of a percentage-based game, but in space, and it has that sort of gritty feel to it. But it's Clarence Red, isn't it, that does M Space? I think he always does a great job with what he does, and I could see it working really very well. But
Jeff, it's similar. So it's a sci-fi version of classic fantasy that we played. You played those 2 sessions, right? Yeah. D100 based. I don't want to get down a rabbit hole about Mithras right now, but it's going to be a good Mithras year, hopefully.
That's an idea.
Good game. What would be the most oddball, since we had a bunch of mashups from last year? What would be the oddball mashup for sci-fi games? So we'll restrict it to sci-fi games, so we're not being like, I want to use Toon to run this.
Oddball mashup. I mean, I feel like you could mash anything, right? I mean, I know like if you did like Mothership, that'd give it like a very horror and almost
Alien,
incompetent kind of feeling, more akin to Alien, right? Yeah. Which there have been traveler adventures like that out in the Challenge magazine, so they're out there, those types of adventures. Oh, and they even had one. They've had stuff even recently too. The some of the drift stuff has like that kind of you're trapped in a location and you got to fight a monster. So but I think it's a different feel, like Mothership, where you're like. Unless you had like first career type of characters, right? That went through 1 or 2 careers, then it'd be similar, I think.
One that might work for War Story, seeing as we've had a lot of the Aslan politics, maybe like Dune, the 2D20 version. Houses and politics.
Yeah, and there's that new Aslan book coming out too. Just for Christmas, they announced another Aslan book, so...
Yeah, it's the one on the Great Houses, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. It's the Great Houses. It's just like 2.
Yeah. I'm just copying down to see if there's any questions.
Well, with a war story, since that's very tightly focused and doesn't need to cover everything, then you could try Imperium Maledictum to do a...
Yeah. Imperium Maledictum is an exceptional mechanic. Like setting aside the fun playing in the grim darkness of the far future, the game itself is just it takes all the interesting things that happened in Warhammer Fantasy, shaves off the burrs, and then further refines it a little bit. It's a fucking solid game. Yeah, it'd be interesting seeing that one repurposed for other general kind of like general sci-fi stuff. Yeah, that's a good idea.
I went one that you have, but it's one that I have that I really great, and it is a very different take and a very different set of rules. So, but if it's a focused war story and you wanted to do a quest, then I'm a big fan of Sean Tompkins' work. So that would be Iron Sworn, or in the case of science fiction, his Starforged game, which is solo co-op and sort of GM'd play. It's got a lot of great stuff. It's got a lot of community additions around the edges of it as well. It produces a very different kind of a game. So if you're looking really for a mashup, then I'll throw that in as a very different approach.
Yeah. No, I've got Ironsworn. I didn't get Starforged, or is Starforged, is that the sci-fi equivalent?
It is, and they've got Sunder Dials, which is kind of like the pirate one.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
As well. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I've got actually I have Coriolis as well. For
lovely.
Yeah, which I have. That's one of those ones that hopefully someone's going to demand that I run at some point, so I can force myself to read the thing, because it looks like the setting looks really interesting, the character options look really interesting, and David, I know you ran it before and said you had a really good time with it.
That's what happened to me just recently. Someone said, what can we play? And I looked on my shelf and said, we could play Coriolis. Everyone said, oh yeah, let's play Coriolis. All right, then, let's do that.
Well, that's the roster for next year, right? The roster choices. I got some great fucking choices of games I would not, otherwise. Getting Fading Suns to the table. Graham and I got pretty obsessed with Fading Suns around summer last year, and then it kind of fell off the track. So I'm glad that one showed up so highly on the rankings, because it getting back into it now, it's a really interesting setting, and I think recent experience with Warhammer Fantasy 4 system mastery with certain games is rewarded. Warhammer Fantasy 4, the first couple times I ran it, I underappreciated how complicated the game is. And in spite of Sean telling me over and over again, like, look, man, there's a lot more going on. I'm like, no, it's fine. It has a lot of stuff going on, but it's so worth learning that game. As far as, subjective, obviously, but Fading Suns, I think, is going to be in that same kind of thing. I'm going to try and get that system mastery down on it before we go. And then I'll inflict that on you guys as a war story, as well as a dressed up excuse to take it for a test run. Why don't we take our mid-session break right now, because we're already well past that. We've only got like another hour left in the stream. I need to get more coffee, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about this campaign again. We, as is often the case, to start chatting about whatever random stuff. So for those listening at home, we'll be back in about 5 minutes. If you have any questions for the players or for myself, go ahead and put it in chat, and I'll address that to them, and then we can talk about it. If not, we'll figure out what we're talking about for the final hour of this thing. So see you back in 5 minutes.
Baby. Okay. Was it very unsatisfactory?
Okay. Thanks, THX. I'm glad that you're enjoying our excursions and our shenanigans in the Trojan Reach. We had... All right, wait for everyone to get back. I did a stroll through the bookshelves to see if there's anything else that jumped out as something that might be of interest. Cypher has a sci-fi source book for it, and I have been bouncing off of Cypher the past couple of times I've run it, but I feel like I just need to get in the right mindset, because I think I'm doing something. I think I'm approaching it from the wrong perspective. But their source books, their setting source or genre source books, are incredible. So the it might be interesting to do a. I think it's Stars Are Fire is the name of their thing. Which, like, honestly, when on first glance, it's like, oh, this is clever, and then you're reading, like, this is just the most fucking, like, trying to sound clever, banal. Stars Are Fire. Yeah, no shit. But what, excuse me, I'm choking for that. Monica got me. Oh, no. So, and our final, as we enter our final hour of our retrospective on 2024, we should perhaps consider other things in 2024. What reflections do you guys have on, we've already gushed about one another on here. What reflections do you have on what has happened to your characters?
What?
What was that, Carl? Oh, did we lose Carl?
It's mainly
No,
Alonso
sorry,
becoming
sorry.
a mutant.
Yeah, sorry. We have to do like a toast to Mo because I did the mute thing.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's a Mo. Here we go.
To Mo.
No.
Tomo. Cheers.
It makes you feel better, Carl. It's not the first time we've toasted Mo in 2025. So, oh, James, what were you saying?
Oh, it's Alonso becoming a mutant. Is the big thing, right?
Yeah, you definitely. I can't remember if your encounter on Hilfer was in 20. It must have been in 2024, right? Like the early part, or was that last year?
Yes, we.
Well, there was the long period where Alonso was playing golf. So,
Hey, that story was not going
so
to
it
write
could have been
itself.
23.
That was during the summer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll check
That's
with
the
our
one sad
archivist.
thing about this campaign for me is that it's like Sunday afternoons is when we play this game, and that's kind of the only time, or one of the major times I get to golf. So I do miss out on a few months of this game every year. So
It is worth saying too, the something that is the fact that you guys make time for this game, Jeff. Like, I'm not singling you out here because you're here when you're not, otherwise pressed by commitments, but that's what makes this kind of ongoing campaign possible, right? Is the commitment of the players for we're going to be here, we're going to play. If we were playing more sporadically, I would feel probably more pressure on myself for trying to get shit done in different sessions. And I don't feel that because I know, like, okay, we don't get done this week. 2 weeks from now, we'll return to whatever. Something, whatever happens at the table is fine because we're going to be back, I know, reliably in 2 weeks' time. It makes prep for it also exceptionally... it's such a pleasure to know that none of that's going to waste. That you're not going to have to, like... I don't mind, like, life comes up and things happen, and it's a happy excuse to run war stories. But for players listening at home who regularly make their sessions when they're scheduled, know that your GM appreciates it enormously, because that is just it's such a... Without players, we're just idiots taking notes and making up stories. We're a log cabin away from a Kaczynski. I mean, bombs as well, but a log cabin away from a Kaczynski then. And it's extremely gratifying having players who will, when I know we're going to play, I know we're going to play, subject to any other kind of things. Graham, in fact, tried to rush back from a con at one point to try and make the session. You did make it back one time, and there's another time where it was not tenable. So I think that's when we did the war story, actually.
I think so.
Yeah, couldn't make
Yeah. So yeah, that's something that consistent stuff has made this very, yeah. If you guys were to guess where you're, like, not obviously the life is going to take them in different directions, and appreciating that Laris is still not sure what he wants. Do any of the other crew members have an idea of where they want to, like, where they see themselves ending up? Or are they kind of caught up in the moment right now and the other life changes they've been going through?
I mean, I can speak first on this one. I am fairly certain that Alonso will die a tragic death at some point in the future of his life. Something is going to go horribly wrong, and the right friend will just not be there to save him in that moment. And it will be a glorious end is the way he would think of it.
Yeah.
A warrior's death.
Wow.
I feel it will occur at some point.
That would be a nice war story spin-off when the rest of us come out of retirement to solve your untimely death for one last mystery to solve.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah, totally right.
And yeah, you could put it during the rebellion era or something, Kevin.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could move the timeline. That'd be kind of cool.
We had another campaign that did something similar where it was like, after the fact stuff, and it was pretty fun. James, I think I interrupted you.
No.
No?
No.
Okay. So then we're Captain Gani or Anchor?
Where do I see my character going?
Yeah. Where does he see himself going?
Where does Anchor see himself going? Yeah, I think he's becoming ambitious, and that he would like to get in. We have one ship, but let's start looking at expanding our fleet. Maybe, I don't know. I'm sure there's ways that we could do that here in the, find a good patron and, expand our fleet and, help subtly put imperial influence on some of these worlds. Maybe he wants to captain his own ship.
Captain Gani?
Well, like I said, he's the more time he spends outside the Third Imperium, the more of a little Imperiumer he is. If that could get him into conflict of out here, because he and with things hotting up, evidently. I guess he sees himself doing his duty out here on the frontier, but...
Is he doing that because it's what he believes, or does he do that in service of his career?
Oh, no, because he believes it. Like I say, he's yes, but not because he's a, ardent imperialist, but because he's an ardent Navy man. He was always disappointed he never got further. He had to leave the Navy. He didn't leave it voluntarily.
He was invited to leave.
Yeah. So he's, nothing more fanatical than the person who's even out. But Navy rather than everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is the thing? They have the source book out. The output for source books this year has been pretty incredible as well for them, because my personal fave has been the ship operators or operations manual, just because I love that kind of, there's been a lot of talk about cozy RPGs on the Discord as of late, and that probably is there's nothing necessarily mechanical. There's some interesting, like, how technologically certain things work in a ship, but it's the seeing what, like, a galley looks like on a Far Trader, or seeing what a lift looks like on a Far Trader, or whatever. I absolutely love that stuff, and that's the kind of stuff that I think for a sci-fi setting really helps newcomers ground themselves in what the rules are, of that world. And it's, oh boy, it's such a good book. Like, almost no mechanical value in it as far as, like, the actual rules are concerned. But as far as learning what, the presentation of how jump travel works and how a ship works and all the other stuff, is just really what you do on a ship, how you communicate. I really, really love that stuff.
I have to say, one of the things I most love in all RPGs, and this goes back from when I was a teenager, and the rest of it, though, it still holds true, is I love the Traveller 2D black and white deck plans.
Oh, the deck plans are incredible. Yeah.
I don't want any of this color stuff and isometric view stuff. The original black and white ones.
What game were we playing? Oh, One Ring. Yeah, we were playing One Ring recently, which has a gorgeous isometric view, but it's like it's hard to tell where it's beautiful stuff, but yeah.
And I was looking. I was watching a video last night on a supplement. It's the Zante-High Lightning. I mean, what other games do you have the deck plan of a 65,000 ton cruiser?
Yep. Yeah.
In hard copy.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah.
I think I've worked out while we've been talking where I see Laris going, but I'm not going to say. I'd like to keep my powder dry.
Yeah.
That one for now.
He's not speaking metaphorically either, too. He's going to shoot the rest of you. So
maybe we found Alonzo's tragic end.
Yeah.
Followed by an airlock.
One of the things I think is interesting about this game as well, the lack of, I mean, you got psychics in it, and you got like ancient alien species and shit like that, but because there isn't the other supernatural stuff, the interesting stuff seems to be the interpersonal stuff. The things that are important to you, that are how they relate to the or are in tension with the interest of your fellows, and then the people that you encounter along the way. And it's such, like, we've talked today about it being an RP heavy campaign, but I think that's and Graham's absolutely right. You can run the game in a ton of different ways too, but because of the way, again, like the random encounter tables that are in the core book, I think it's assumed that there's a great degree of like interacting with the world. That's a big part of what makes Traveller a fun experience. It's just folks in that future, in the far future even. Not the grimdark future, mind you. Things are not quite as, dogmatic in here. Although don't go to there's one planet that you guys will want to avoid on that count. But I won't tell you till you get there. I think that the game itself, the assumptions about how the game is played and how you're going to be making your way through the story is that encourages that stuff as well, which again is an underappreciated, It's like what people say about old school role playing, right? Like, the rules were so simple before, so you just had to come up with ways to work around them. You're forced to think about your character more than the game mechanics. So that's my voice for OSR fans, by the way. So I love OSR fans for the most part. The racists, they can get fucked, but the rest are lovely people who are in some really interesting games. But I think that's to a degree true, and maybe something that Traveller doesn't get credit for as well, is because there's all sort of sub rules or sub systems you can engage with. The default assumption of how you're playing through a story, without considering the actual game mechanics, is that kind of like, there isn't game mechanics to fill in the stuff here, so you're role playing and you're adding your own kind of things.
Yeah.
One thing I really enjoyed in the Borderland Run, and I think a lot of credit to you for that, and for the setting, I guess, is like the Aslan came across as really alien, not like super strange. They're sort of like sentient and human related-ish, but as a culturally interesting to explore and to interact with the editor and find out more about his way of thinking and Aslan's way of thinking. As someone who's not as familiar with the setting, as I've said before, I found it really interesting to get to know the Aslan culture. Was as my character gets to know them, me as a player got to know the Aslan culture, and I thought that was really well done in like the differences, and then figuring out why they act the way they act and what's going on. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, the Aslan are very. To be honest, all the aliens I've read about thus far have like the Darians. When I was passingly familiar with them, but only in like, they're space elves. It wasn't until Graham said he was going to play a Darien as his second character that I actually took a look, and I'm like, these are actually really fucking cool, and they do. And to your credit, Graham, I feel like you have been. You guys can tell me if I've got this wrong. I feel like you have been playing Laris as distinctly an offshoot of humanity, as opposed to just playing like a human with funny ears. The way you've analyzed things, the way you've interacted with NPCs, not only is it markedly different from how you were playing Dane, it feels like it is someone coming from a very different cultural perspective than what the rest of the folks come from.
It's nice that Traveller supports you in that. They give you, I don't know, maybe 3 pages that you can read, and it sort of tells you, gives you pointers as to how a character might think a little bit different if they are a transplanted human species, but they're culturally sort of quite different.
Yeah. So, any other standouts from 2024 or adventures in 2024 thus far? Tragedies.
I mean, I absolutely enjoyed meeting Princess Rao and being at the court of
Just rub it in.
Drinax. Sorry. One day you'll.
You know,
Sundays
Sundays.
an extra audience with her just for you.
Sundays are the day when we most often will see people outside, it seems. So Anna is never more vocal than when we're doing these games. She's only spoken up once so far, and that was to say how much of a fan she is of Laris. But I do really love that. Like, I think 2 of the people who posted in the Discord saying like, "Hey, new here and blah blah blah, we're watching this," have mentioned Anna in their comments. And I think every now and then people comment about that too. And canonically, King Oleb also has a similar vocal hound somewhere else in the palace, and it speaks very much to his character that on that crowded flying city that has no space for anything, he's insisting on keeping a really noisy dog. So
That's funny.
Well, I can't think of anything else off top of my head. Do you guys have any questions for either each other or for myself? Or observations otherwise?
Not a question, but a shout out to all the regulars in chat.
Yeah.
Who very enthusiastically
Yeah,
join us session after session and fly
the
along in our
people-
adventures.
and the people who come into the Discord or say, "I'm here because of the Traveler," type of thing. Was kind of cool.
The Traveler fans, we've talked about the 40K fans, but Traveler fans have been lovely as well. Like the folks who we've commented on the videos who are longtime Traveler fans and whatnot. What a great community.
Yeah, certain games, certain of these older games, or that people have a nostalgia for. Like I've noticed that with our Twilight 2000 campaign, there's a lot of old Twilight 2000 fans around, and they dig it. So yeah, it's the same thing with Traveler. Like, oh, I remember this game, and whether they played it or not, it definitely holds a spot as one of the early games. For a lot of people.
Yeah.
And in our we're part-time actors actually. No, I'm just kidding. It's good. It's really it's cool. It's cool to see that in the Discord and in the chat. I'm here. I saw this Traveler game and I heard it. And, wanted to learn about the game and because probably a lot of people like, well, I played back in the Little Black Books. I played Mega Traveler or whatever Traveler New Era, and they're like, oh, what's the new one like? And they check it out. And then again, it's not heavy on the mechanics, but we do a lot of things that not actually start fighting. So I think that's good.
Yeah.
We do a lot of things that show and highlight, and you're good. I think what's cool is we go through the procedures too. You could kind of say, we've done so many jumps, but hey, let's go through the jump procedure because you never know.
Yeah.
Right?
Because we're playing with the Snake Eyes, house rule as well. Like there's, who knows what might happen with that.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments?
I probably mostly just, the obvious thing, which is probably implicit in the entire discussion, is just how much I've really, really enjoyed playing it. And I'm sort of. I talk about this elsewhere about how sometimes when you're in a very, very long campaign, a couple of things can happen. Either you can lose interest, and that's just one of those things, or the character arc that you're playing sort of doesn't make much sense anymore, and you sort of lose connection with why your character is doing whatever the campaign is doing. And that can happen, particularly with long campaigns, and you should never feel locked into one. I haven't felt that obviously remotely at all with the Traveler. There's always been something fresh. There's always something going on. The characters have always seemed relevant and grown together a little bit. So, yeah, mostly it's just to say, I suppose, I want to say a thank you for your very, very, very good refereeing of the game as ever, and creating fantastic environment for us to play in.
You're most welcome. We can't end on that because that's just self-gratifying. I appreciate the kind words, definitely. And I would agree too. Like I don't know. You would ask before, Carl, or comment about like a yes DM. That's something I'm always interested in hearing is what is going on. You guys will always know what is going on with your characters better than I would, and I'm always interested to hear what is going on in a certain moment with certain characters, right? And that is for folks, who are wanting to run a game like this at home. That's I think aside from the self-interested perspective where it gives me insight into what is motivating these characters in the moment, and that can change. One of the neat things, it's real life people playing these characters, so they feel like real life characters, because what a character is saying or doing one day may be different a couple of weeks or months in the future, and knowing where their head is at over the course of a campaign is really helpful for motivating and whatnot, or writing stuff on your side. But also I think it serves a purpose of bringing the characters back into that scene. So it helps with, I think it gives the players an opportunity to take a moment and be like, all right, well, what is going on with me in this moment? How am I feeling about this? And for roleplay heavy campaigns, if you are looking to have that mindset inform how you're playing the game, that is a really helpful way to constantly kind of gently remind everyone of or not remind, but to help reorient where you are and what you're thinking, right? Because ideally you are seeing that kind of change over time of escalating, in response to different events and tensions and whatnot. You'll see the characters changing. So it's also incredibly gratifying to hear how many people are getting Traveler to the table as well. I don't think we're obviously not, I'm not saying that we're driving anything or anything like that. We love hearing if our session gets one group of Travelers together. That is phenomenal. It is such a fun game, and we have so much fun playing and running this game. It's awesome hearing that there are other people who are doing the same thing too. It's such a game that definitely, it deserves its place in the kind of pantheon of elders of RPGs. And Mongoose. That's another big thing.
Mongoose.
Millar. Yeah, Miller. I keep saying Millar. Mark Miller sold the rest of the rights to Mongoose.
Mm.
So Mongoose is the custodian of Traveler from now on.
That's great.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, they have brought back a lot of products that were extremely popular, like the World Builders Guide, the Starship Guide. I mean, different forms, brand new content. So they've really been good stewards of the game. So I'm glad that that's happening.
I think I
More
mentioned on the stream.
importantly, the Fifth Frontier War.
Yeah, in the Fifth
What's
Frontier
that?
War.
Yeah, the
Most
Fifth Frontier
importantly,
War.
the Fifth Frontier War.
Yeah, that's harkens back to the Girdle of the Traveler's Aid Society stuff. It's great.
Mm.
And they always bring brand new content. People like Martin Doherty, among others. An author that what I remember from back in the Traveler 2D20 or Traveler D20 days, right? So he's been doing stuff for a while, and I do like the products. I really like what they've done. So
Yeah.
I think the enduring appeal of Traveller is the fact that you've got a starship, and if you've got a starship, you've got deck plans and all that. And then if you've got a starship, if you've got a ship, you can have a ship's cat. So there you are. That's why
we do.
Lucy.
We do have Lucy.
Yeah. I think the feel, I don't know, having the deck plans and having the conversation over the deck plans, like picturing where your characters are sitting and whatnot, there's just an added little bit of extra, I don't know, tangibility that comes with it. A shared resource is something you get in a lot of games, or not a lot of games, but some games, right? And this one, I think, I don't know, it does such a good job of making it a tangible home base because of those deck plans that it just feels like, I don't know.
Totally. You've got your cabin. You know where your cabin is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think something that's kind of cool and that we haven't mentioned, I think it's a ongoing thing that we do in this game is even from the very beginning, it was a meal, right? It was a shared experience of a meal. When we first got out on the ship way back on Squirrel, and our big meetings are always at the dinner table. When we had the big revelation with Tila Toral is at the dinner table, and that's kind of cool because it makes it kind of like a this virtual family because we have this home, the ship, and then we share meals together. And I think that and those sessions have been really. I mean, probably overlook them because they're not as action packed, but those sessions have been very tense and really tremendous as far as role playing goes. And I think it's really cool that, incorporating something we do every day. We share meals together. We do entertainment. We play sports, whether take golf or tennis, or when I used to play rugby and I had all my digits worked, all my hands and feet worked properly. Not full of arthritis like they are now. Age. But but those are the shared experiences. Yeah, those are the shared experiences. Oh, they have aging rules in travel. Yeah. So there you go. Everything's. But those shared experiences, I think, what makes a game great, because it does mirror sort of life, but in a fictitious, like you say at the end of in your blurb, take time away from the troubles of the world. And sports and eating are big things in our society and for us. And I think that's great that we have incorporated those at very poignant points in this campaign. I think that's what gives it some staying power. No sports yet, but we can all get into Warhammer Fantasy and play some snot ball or blood bowls.
I think the only we have played Goat Ball in our Legacy of the Crystal Shard campaign. I think that's the only sporting activity we've seen in any of our campaigns on the channel thus far. You remind me of the Firefly series. They have all the like interviews with the cast and whatnot, and one of the things they really lauded the set design for was their, I don't know if you remember, on the Serenity they have their like common area for it, and it was so well designed and so comfy for living in that the actors would hang out there when they weren't making use of it for a scene. Oh wow! They just hang out there because that was the most comfortable place around to sort of hang out. And I didn't intentionally, try and draw that, but I imagine it's some of that same appeal of, I don't know, like the things that we know that are comfy, because that we all sort of associate with. I heard, I read an article about Harlan Ellison last week, the sci-fi writer, and one of the things he's, if you can find, you can find the article probably pretty easy because it's about his estate, and they have photos of his home in there, and his home is just like a tchotchke-filled, fucking crazy, place. It looks like a hoarder's thing, but very intentional. Like there's not stuff that's stacked out of order. And one of the things he had said when he was alive is about how it's a Shangri-La and he's obviously. A version of Shangri-La is that you are surrounded by all the things that bring you joy. It's a place that you are where you all, you are surrounded by things that just bring you joy. And that is what his home was just everything, everywhere he looked, he had something that was like happy memory or whatever else. And making the place where the ship, that place that is going to be a recurring part, because you're traveling around to all different, places, and we've had a change of crew, but the recurring, persisting thing is that the ship. And Traveler has some really fucking cool ships in it. Have I mentioned the Bounty Hunter ship, guys? That is going to be... Yeah, see, we're going to add that to our fleet. Yeah. Awesome. So anything else, guys? Any big plans for your heroes once we wrap up, or Travelers, once we wrap up this current job? King Oleb, it seems, is... interested in something. I don't know what's going on with that, but Laris has some treasure to track down. Someone also had mentioned a war story with Dane, and that'd be an interesting thing. Like that's an obvious, I think, idea too. But I don't know if Dane. I could see there's obviously some clear ideas of what you could do with adventures for that, where we're just checking back in on Dane, but. Because you've intentionally placed him off camera for it, I wonder if the more interesting way to learn about what's going on with him is through on-camera stuff from third parties.
Yeah, agreed.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that'd be really interesting.
Like there may be people who are similar to this, have peripheral, relationships with Dane or with Tila Toril or whatnot, but to go back to Dane seems like it would be a continuation of the Reign campaign as opposed to a war story.
Yeah, and to find out how Tila Toril actually progresses, having exonerated himself, just to see how that plays out will be interesting.
It'd be really disappointing if he was just a complete fucking fail son, eh?
Yeah.
Like exactly, it's a complete fuck up. Just people like him a lot. Oh shit, we really backed the wrong horse here.
Yeah, they got to the playoffs, but they lose the first game. You know?
Exactly. Immediately tripped and fell flat on his face. Oh shit.
Yeah.
Oh my
I guess for
gosh.
Captain Ghani, when it's the opposite, and he successfully leads the invasion of the Third Imperium.
Yeah, that's going to be really. So, who was the one who put this guy into position for doing this terrible shit? Of course, Doctor in the history books, Dr. Abdel will be written about as being the spy master who made this all come together. So,
Yep.
who is responsible for the fall of the Third Imperium? I have one likely suspect. Then, anything closing, guys, before we wrap up our 2024 year in review for, I mean, it was campaign retrospective, I suppose, in general.
I'm just looking forward to seeing what the year has in store for us.
Yeah, the new change in direction. I mean, I know it seems similar, but definitely, I think we're moving towards something, and I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, it's been like running the module was a ton of fun, and sometimes I find like if I'm at the conclusion that I'm at a loss, well, I do one of two things. I'm either at a loss for what to do, or I just overwhelm you guys with a fuck ton of options, and it's like analysis paralysis sets in, and you're like, I don't even know where to start with this. But you guys did a really good job of like parsing through, like, okay, here's some available options, but this is the thing we want to do right now, knowing that whatever things we don't choose are going to be progressing on their own. And I think with this, one of the things we talked about on our Wednesday game after when we were doing our like post-session debrief, one of the players was like, that was a lot of fun just role-playing out and getting to know this character who we kind of invented for the scene. And there's so many of those characters we've had in this campaign where they've just like emerged in the course of the play, and then they become fixtures or parts of the ongoing campaign. That is some of my favorite emergent play stuff is, some people are critical sometimes of non-scripted stuff or of you incorporating random stuff. And if you adopt the approach that if it happens at the table, it's important and it matters. It doesn't matter how it got there, whether it was written by the GM or it was, rolled in a random table on the moment of. Once it's in the game, it's in the game and it matters. And then we just got to figure out why it matters and why it happened. I think that can make for some really satisfying gameplay from the GM's perspective. That is for me, the death of the like long-term campaign. It's just like when I'm waiting for you guys to hit a series of rooms, metaphorically speaking, it bores me to fucking tears. But when I'm surprised by stuff that's coming up as well, it makes for a much more engaging and much more enjoyable experience from a GM's perspective, without just like fucking with you guys. Hey guys, zombies! Let's go. Jeff was in that game. I was like running Horde of the Dragon Queen, and it just bored me to fuck. So I was like, all right, zombies, here we go. We're having a zombie apocalypse, guys, because I'm bored.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah. All right. Then I think that brings us to the end of our retrospective then, guys. We're a little early for the session.
Okay.
But that brings us, so for those, I'll double one last check here. Oh, Jeeves is saying he's sadly on the wrong forums or discords to find a group to play with. Do you guys know anywhere else where there's folks who are looking for Traveler players? We've seen one or two on our posts about it on our Discord's Find a Group game, but I think a lot of people there end up going to like CNC or AD&D Second or similar types of games. Do you guys know anywhere else to look for, or what would be
what's that? Oh man, they do the little Traveler convention every year. Let me look at if I look on my phone.
Yeah. So we'll find out here, Jeeves. We've got
yeah.
I was just looking at the Mongoose site.
Yeah, the Mongoose one.
He did say the forums. Maybe I'm assuming he's looking on they are looking on the Mongoose forums already.
Cyborg Prime Games. They do Cyborg Prime Games is Discord, and they do a Traveler Mayday type of thing. So.
Oh, nice. So there you go, Jeeves. There's one option, and then I would also suggest, like, geez, it was so much easier in the day of G Plus, right?
Yeah.
Google Plus is so much easier just to have like awesome communities that would you could find. I would, I'm sure you've looked there already too, but in the event you haven't, the Mongoose forums may have some suggestions, and Roll20 as well. There is an integrated sheet. We actually don't use the official sheet in our game, but we started using it in the Wednesday games, and it's really good. And there's often, if there is a good sheet for Roll20, that means there's going to be a Looking for Group forum on Roll20 as well. So you may find something for Traveler there.
Oh, right. That's true.
There's a Traveler RPG Discord with a GM looking for players. I don't know if you're already on that. You said you were in a few things. If you're not, let me just put an invite into that Discord in the chat. And then you could join that. And there is a GM's looking for players thread in that. Maybe something will come from that. I'll just post that in now.
Perfect.
Okay.
Excellent.
Cool.
All right. Well, then, for those listening at home, thank you so much for joining us for this retrospective for our ongoing traveling. And for the length of the campaign or any other things you join us on the channel, thank you so much for joining us. As is always the case, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns regarding our Traveler campaign, or the game itself, please don't hesitate to leave a comment in the comment section down below, and I'll endeavor to reply in a timely fashion. There's also a link down below to the Dungeon Musings Discord server, where I think we have a we have a Borderland Run channel dedicated to that. I will be responding to the two folks who I haven't responded to yet on that. I had some busy Marvel Rival stuff yesterday, so I was completely distracted.
Oh yeah, important. I know. Important stuff.
You know, that yelling at the TV is not going to take care of itself. So there's also a on that channel, we got a channel on the Discord server. There's also channels dedicated to most of the games we run on the channel, as well as most of the campaigns we have, as well as Find a Group, GM discussion, for convention chat, virtual tabletop chat. Lots of very helpful, knowledgeable, and friendly people over there. You are more than welcome to join us. There is also a link down below to our friends at Noble Knight Games. Noble Knight Games is the preeminent unionized retailer of hard-to-find and out-of-print RPGs in North America. Not only do they have an incredible selection of new role-playing games, board games, and card games, they have an unmatched selection of hard-to-find and out-of-print RPGs, like, say, for instance, the Dark Eye RPG, published by Ulysses Spiele. If they do not have something in stock that you are looking for, you can put it on a want list, and they'll send you an email when it comes in. And if you make a purchase of $10 or more through their website, be sure to enter the code MuserFrost, all caps, all one word. It is also in the description of the video. You'll save yourself 10% in your purchase. That is going to change on January 15, 2025. So if you're listening to this after that date, come back to one of our more recent videos and you will see what the current discount code is listed there. The last thing I will say for today and for the past 2 years is a huge thank you to our stalwart travelers. So James, David, Carl, Jeffrey, and Graham, thank you so much for joining me in the Trojan Reach for all this time. As is always the case, I am so sorry for what's about to happen. So we will be back in the Trojan Reach in 2 weeks' time. But until then, we hope that we have given you a few hours to take your mind off the troubles of our world and think about some of the opportunities and fun we've had with this campaign over these last 2 years. And until we see you again, stay safe, stay healthy, and happy gaming.